We're down here in the beautiful surroundings of the South Dublin County Council County Hall, and I'm very pleased to say that our first guest of 2016 is the Mayor herself, First Citizen Sarah Holland.
Hello, Mick.
Yeah, welcome back again to CouncilMatters.
Thank you.
Yeah, what I've seen, before we had you on the programme, you were just about to be, as we say, elevated. Everything I have seen, you have taken to the office like a duck to water. What's the experience been over the past 6 months?
I have absolutely loved it. I love getting out and about. I love meeting people. I love the variety of experiences that I've had. You know, I get to see parts of this county that I wouldn't normally get to see. I live out in Ballyboden, which is a very, it's a beautiful leafy suburb, but with this job it's taken me into every corner of this constituency, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Something I was I was concerned with, and I'd just be very interested to hear your feedback on this. I was concerned that Dubliners can often be a bit reserved when somebody has a different accent. You are very proud of your accent, and you've never tried to change it at all. Has it been a barrier?
Not at all. I think people are surprised when I open my mouth and a big Nordie accent comes out. But most people are intrigued and they come up and ask me where I'm from, how long I've been here for. So they're very interested in it.
Yeah. Something, and I suspect it's much more difficult for a woman, is that you must have to have an enormous wardrobe. Clothes. I have seen you in such a range of clothes. I thought, my word, she must be like John Lennon, an entire floor for her civic wear.
Yes, I do. But I'm one of those women who loves going around shopping. Mixing and matching things, and of course
show us these the docs.
I'm never without the docs.
Do you find them comfortable?
Oh, they're yeah.
And after all these years, I mean, I first saw docs, I think in the late 60s, early 70s. 45 years later, they're still stylish.
Yeah. I mean, I got my first wee pair of docs in the 90s, and I've pretty much never had them off since. I love them.
You weren't a skinhead, were you, in those days?
No. I was a fan of Nirvana,
what can you say? What can you say? The immortal. Now, again, since you brought it up, most of the listeners, and certainly most of the citizens out here, they don't know how terminally hip their mayor is. And you see, I do, because we discovered, you and I have a mutual interest in the immortal Warren Zevon.
All-time favourite.
Now Warren is my era, I understand that. How did you come across Warren?
Oh, my daddy had a greengrocer shop, and part of the function of that shop was himself and his pals hanging around and listening to music. So us girls were reared on a diet of Warren Zevon, Tom Waits, Bob Dylan, Green Day, actually. Yeah, he was one of our favourites as well.
Are they there that long?
Well, Daddy became a fan, and many street preachers as well. He loved them too. So it was but I have to say that myself and all the sisters, Warren Zevon is our all-time favourite, and one of our favourites was, mine is Roland the Headless Thompson Gunner.
Oh, isn't it astonishing?
I love it.
It's funny you should mention that, because I was thinking to myself, the album is An Excitable Boy. That's the one we both love. And I thought to myself, I was going to ask you which one would sum you up, and I thought probably Roland the Thompson.
Yeah, that's my favourite. And we love. It became particularly apt when we were going through the court cases. My daddy was murdered, and there was a big high-profile court case, so it became particularly apt: lawyers, guns, and money.
That's I would say if there's one that sums me up, it's probably lawyers, guns, and money. So would you find yourself going around the house doing a bit of the cleaning and singing Roland the Thompson Gunner?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my wee daughter loves it too. I think Warren Zevon is someone who. His music kind of transcends generations. It speaks to everybody, like. Yeah,
and yet he was an interesting character. His father was a gangster.
Yeah, he was a very interesting character.
Wasn't he?
And he didn't pull any punches.
Well, that's what I think. I think you wouldn't probably get too many Warren Zevons these days
No.
because corporate has taken
Yeah.
over music, and it's a bit antiseptic, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
which is a shame. Yeah. Well, perhaps. Well, no, unfortunately, Warren's not with us anymore. But who knows? Maybe you get Tom Waits at the at the Roar Red.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Fingers crossed. Well, there was a councillor wanting to bring Adele to the Tallaght Stadium, so I'll start pushing for Tom Waits in the Roar Red.
As I say, who knows? Well, it's an interesting one because this is about the 6th time I've been out to this part of the world in the last 12 months. I haven't gone to Finland, but for some reason or other I find it interesting to come out here, but mainly because it wasn't here when I was a kid, and that's why I'm intrigued as to how the area is evolving. And it was only today when I was coming out on the Lewis, something struck me that I couldn't really put my hand on in the past, is that when I come out here, I don't tend to see a society, I tend to see an economy. Now I suppose to a certain degree that's inevitable because that would have gone in there. But when I was out in the, we'll come to it, the Fur House area, all I saw out there was a society. I didn't necessarily see an economy. Is it a challenge to the council to somehow be bringing those two facets together, because they're both essential to the area?
Not at all, really. We have a really progressive council out here. The fact is that we're very lucky here to have Grange Castle Business Park and those other business parks, because the ratepayers keep our public services afloat here. So the money that those rates bring in, we invest heavily in very progressive budgets into our public services, such as our door and window maintenance programs, footpath repair, tree pruning. So the business community and the ordinary people, like myself, are very much interlinked in this constituency, in this county, and we depend on each other. Yep.
Is there competition? You've got a couple of hubs here. You've got Tallaght, which is obviously the main one. You've got Clondalkin as well. Is there any competition, or are they each evolving at their own pace?
Yeah, each coming along at their own pace. I have to say that Tallaght Village has come along in leaps and bounds, and a lot of that is down to the work of the council and also the Tallaght Community Council. There's a huge, strong community organisation here, and the same goes for Clondalkin. I mean, they're tidy towns. As you know, it was started by someone who was in the direct provision system, and who came out and wanted to give back to the place that he now lives in. And they're now an award-winning Tidy Towns Committee. And as well as that, out in Clondalkin, we now have the rejuvenation of the Round Tower, so there's going to be a huge amount of investment into that wee village hub to bring out the historical and cultural side over there. There's going to be a cafe, a wee museum. It's all very exciting for the county.
What is the significance? What is the background to that Round Tower? Because I remember the first time I came out, going back 10 years ago, and I didn't know there was a Round Tower there. You expect them in Glendalough, and I saw a Round Tower and I thought, that's fascinating. Because clearly it's an original. It's not it's not something that you stuck up to bring the tourists out. Was there a monastery or an abbey or something around that part of the world?
Exactly. Now Clondalkin, the civic office out there had a really successful event recently, and I think it's something that they want to roll out across the county. They had what they called a Heritage Day, where everybody came in from nearby and brought sort of old photographs, mementos of years gone by, and the library assimilated them all, and they have a project there to bring all of that local history to life in a more accessible way. And it was an unprecedented success. So, and they had a similar thing up in the Dublin Mountains recently as well.
Something that's going to be very significant in 2016, and he may not be the mayor at the time. We'll see how that pans out depending on the election. 1916. This area was probably outlying. It probably didn't necessarily, other than perhaps supplying a few people, it didn't necessarily feature in itself. What are the plans for 1916 commemorations in this part of the world?
We have a huge, the programme is here actually, we have a huge lineup of events. And I think the most successful thing about this, I can be contradicted on this, was the community participation element. All of the community groups came forward in huge numbers to engage with the council and to put forward their project ideas. So, and some of them are really exciting. I mean, we have a film being produced. We have one of the residents' associations asked for a 1,000 red rose bushes to be planted along the ways in Rathfarnham, you know, where the volunteers on that day got up and cycled into the GPO.
Sure.
We'll have a keynote event in the Pierce Museum in Rathfarnham. President Higgins is going to be there. So there's going to be a huge and really interesting programme of events. And actually, the Deputy Mayor, Francis Noel Duffy, as you know, he's an artist. He's going to be having an exhibition of women in the rising, of paintings that he's done in Ballyroan Library, so I'm really looking forward to that as well.
It's an interesting one, that one, because I've spoken to different people about it. How important do you think it is that we have the centenary as more inclusive than the 50th anniversary? Because by and large, women were relatively airbrushed out, and most minorities, let's be honest, were airbrushed out of the 50th anniversary. That was largely organised by Fianna Fáil. I think there's going to be a much greater Sinn Féin input into the Dublin one and into the South Dublin one. Will there be a difference in that sense of the word, or Sinn Féin's perspective per se? Is it likely to be more inclusive? I mean, absolutely.
I mean, our whole ethos is inclusiveness and equality. So the role of women in the rising is very much going to be celebrated and promoted. And I think I was just reading recently, skimming over the story of Winifred Carney, who is from Belfast. So there's going to be a big emphasis on the really valuable role that women played. So we're going to be celebrating the female warriors of that time.
Is there any from this part of the world? Because again, this is one of my particular interests as well. Is that women played a significant role in the events of 1916. They might have played the what we would call the military role, but they played an enormously important infrastructure role. Is there any here? You've mentioned Winifred Carney from Belfast. Is there any from this part of the world that people can somehow or other relate to?
To be honest with you now, I'm not sure. But Francis Noel Duffy gave me a book recently, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, about women in the rising, so I'm going to get digging into that and find out all about it.
Well, because I have praised him as a very fine artist, so we're looking forward to that in his own capacity. Moving on in that regard, you mentioned when we spoke in the past of promoting South Dublin as a tourist venue, or at least as a visitor venue. And I suspect its internal tourism is more significant than perhaps overseas tourism or anything like that. Now, any time I've been out here, except for one particular occasion, there were social occasions, I've only ever come out here during the day, and when I look at this particular part, it reminds me a bit of Smithfield, in the sense that I can imagine it being a bit of a desert at night, in the sense that it's got everything going for it, but it somehow or other it needs that magnetism to drag people in. I suspect from the council's point of view, it's very difficult to do that without significant investment, or at least cutting deals with people who will want to make money out of it. How is that working out?
Well, we just have the Arts Centre Rear Raid nearby, and also the Civic Theatre, which is hugely successful and is a huge hub for the cultural community here in South Dublin. So I was out there recently for the social inclusion show, which was a huge success. It was lovely, and of course I have a ballet on at the minute, and then there's going to be a pantomime as well. Theatre actually is really vibrant, but as you say, there's a bit of a dearth of sort of
it needs energy, doesn't it? It needs atmosphere in that sense.
Once the shopping centre's closed, it is very quiet around this end. But we're promoting what we're hoping to do is to open up Tala as a gateway to the Dublin Mountains. So we're going to put significant investment into a visitor centre up there, potentially around the Hellfire Club. And as you know, and we had a delegation over recently from Tampa in Florida. We took them all around the county and showed them all of the sort of the scenery, the historical sort of aspect of the county, and the beauty of the mountains as well, and they were really taken by it. So with investment, this place could be opened up. I mean, it could be, a huge tourist destination, especially with the cycleway going from Grand Canal Dock up into the mountains.
Would be interesting, wouldn't it? Yes. Tell me now, the Hellfire Club. The last time, it's been a very long time since I walked up there, and it was in a fairly dishevelled derelict sort of state. What condition is it in now? I mean, it would cost a few bob to put that back together again.
Yeah, oh God, it would. Yeah, I mean, you could still go inside and everything, and it's so spooky. And I mean, the stories have gone around every school in this county about it's haunted and this, that, and the other. And you can't wear holy medals up to it, otherwise, you know, the devil's going to get you or something like that. It is actually really spooky and it's fascinating, but it's, even though it's in that state, it's actually a really popular walking destination. Every weekend sees it packed up there.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The mythology, if you like, that was passed down to me. My mother, who was of Northern Irish, as we say, extraction, she used to always say to me that there were men playing cards there, and one was cheating. And the devil even hates card cheats. That's it. Satan hates card cheats. That was it. And as a result, he came there and torched the place or whatever. Now, the chances are it was just an accident. But the Hellfire Club itself, not the structure, but the organisation. They were a fascinating group of. I mean, not the. It's the sort of organisation I'd expect, say, George Osborne and David Cameron, and maybe even Boris Johnson to have been members of in the past. I mean,
it's kind of like that Billingdon Club.
Exactly, you know, it was rich, privileged people who really looked down their noses on everybody else and probably exploited all the scullery maids that you and I are descended from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, actually, I had a similar conversation with my fiancé about that too. And drew parallels with the kind of elite Tories over in Britain. Yeah, it's exactly the same type of thing. But if you can imagine how far they had to come out on horseback, way out from the city up into the mountains, it's so...
They weren't going out there to play a game of Snap,
were they? Oh, yeah.
Well, as I say, it was... the sheer fact that if you like, leaving aside all the mythology, what does come down through the ages is that these were rich, privileged people, basically having their own way, and that's that if you like, that's the nub of the story. Of course, being Ireland, we don't like the truth to get in the way of
a good story. No, the devil was definitely there.
But there's, as I say, if you ever look at the whole issue of Whitby in Yorkshire, I mean, Whitby, which is where Bram Stoker originally set the whole story of the Dracula stuff and all of that. That has become a massive tourist attraction for all the steampunks. So who knows, you could have a tourist attraction up there in the mountains.
Absolutely, and we're definitely looking forward to it anyway. I mean, it's part of the longer term plan, but the mountains are already really widely used by, you know, local walkers and
Scouts. We used to go with the Scouts up there. Now, something that's probably a more, as we say, a more celebrated and a more acceptable tourist destination would be Patrick Pearse's school. That's in your area, isn't it?
It is, And myself and my daughter are frequent visitors in there, and even just to go for quiet reflection, it's kind of awe-inspiring when you see sort of, for example, they have on display there the oration, the handwritten oration that Patrick Pearse gave at the graveside of O'Donovan Rossa. They have just things like that kind of, they really spark your imagination and make you think. So, and then of course they have a lovely wee cafe there as well.
Is that going to be, as I say, more of a focus coming up in the next 6? I would expect that people would be particularly interested in travelling out to see it because because you know. Pearse is as much known as an educator and an artist and a writer as he is as a revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, you'd be surprised how many people actually didn't even know it was there. So it's really come to the fore recently, and of course, I do a lot of sharing on social media and stuff like that. So it's bringing the fact that it's there to people's attention and sparking interest in it.
Yeah. Something I was talking to your party colleague and mayoral colleague, Crina Nidolig, last week. Now, Crina is she's very committed to the Chonga Náisiúnta. She's an excellent speaker of the Irish language. She was saying to me something I thought was quite interesting, that she was hoping to have an Irish-speaking area in the centre of Dublin. Now, as I say, it's a noble objective. Now, how successful, it depends on how much, if you like, support and infrastructure investment goes into it. Is there any plans or any thoughts of such a facility out here? It's not quite the same thing. Would you be looking at that within the county?
Absolutely. I mean, there already is a wee club here called Gael Fubble Tailachta. And they have a sort of a clerical chora once or twice a week. And they actually have got a little building now on the main street. and we as a council gave them €50,000 recently from our community initiative fund in order to refurbish it, so that's going to be a hub. They're going to have sort of homework clubs, conversation circles, you know, all of the things that a Cllr land should have. So that's another exciting project for the village.
Sure. The other issue as well that I think we will certainly be hearing a great deal more about come January is you're also running in the general election for the Dublin South West constituency.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it's the one that Adrian Kavanagh is giving as the most democratic in the sense that he's pretty much giving one seat to everybody. That's not good news for Sinn Féin. Or you beg to differ with him.
Yeah, well, in a way, you know, Sean Crowley does a lot of work around here, and our primary objective when we started out in this was to make sure that our existing seat is protected and kept. So that's what we're going to do, and that's our main objective. Sean himself and Sinn Féin are very progressive, so I'm delighted to be running alongside him. And I think with hard work and fingers crossed I may get in on Sean's transfers, you know, but again, we live in a democracy, it's up to the voters. No,
as I say, it's you can't, the polls change from week to week.
Exactly,
so you can't really, they've gone from 2 independents to 1 independent and so on and so forth, so it's more to the point, it's one that's they're perhaps predicting that could almost return a majority of women if you got elected. And that would be quite interesting because out where I am, Dublin North Bay, or at least Dublin North East, never elected a woman, which in the history of the state, I am openly admitting is shameful.
It is.
I hope will not happen again this time. How important then do you think it is for at least an increased presence of female consciousness in the in the Dáil?
I mean, it's hugely important. The fact is that you know, for years there's most definitely a glass ceiling there, and you know, it's easier for women to break through that glass ceiling in some parties than it is in others. Sinn Féin were very progressive on this front, and they said anywhere where there is room to run 2 candidates, we would prefer that one of them was a woman. So we all discussed it amongst ourselves, and I put myself forward for it. They're very supportive. It's a very supportive party. The work that I have to do here is supported by my council colleagues as well, you know. So I definitely think even if you're not a Sinn Féiner, if you're not a Republican, have a look at your female candidates, see what they have to offer, see what they've done for the area. You know, women have a lot to offer here, and we need to have our voices heard.
Something that's always, I always think is very unfair, you know, I've seen male candidates come out with their ties out there and their shirts open and the belly of the waist and all of that. We never tend to criticise male politicians on their dress. Because you're such a stylish dresser, I have never seen anybody criticise you for your dress. However, what was interesting when you were on the Vincent Brown one, didn't hear anybody criticise anything you said, but they all pointed out, all the critics were saying, oh, she ain't chunga. Is it unfair? Do we, is our cultural, political culture such that we look for ways to run women down?
Well, it's to a certain degree it is kind of institutionalised, but yes, I had to laugh at that chewing gum. It's in Belfast there's a saying, I don't know if you recall this, strong working class women are referred to as millies.
Yes, you did mention that.
Yes, it went back to the time when women worked in the mills and they were the ones who fed their families and whatnot. And my grandmother was a millie, and she always said to me, if anyone calls you a millie, you should be proud of it. And millies, like myself, chew gum, even on television.
But do mayors.
Yes.
Isn't that the problem? Is that the difficulty is that in certain circumstances you lose the persona and you take on the role, and that's why I'm not in politics. I mean, everyone comes in for a certain amount of criticism. You did turn up, unlike certain parties, you did turn up. That one, and I'm just wondering, because particularly this area has had a negative focus, perhaps it's the media, in terms of the way politics is done out here. And I'm not going to go into court cases or anything like that, but that Vincent Brown episode, many people say, well, the programme really changed over that one because it stopped being a political discussion and it was an organised harangue, whether it was organised against you guys or people who weren't there. How do you feel about that? Is the culture here perhaps a bit too hands-on, I wonder?
I don't think you can ever be too hands-on when it comes to expressing your political opinions. I mean, for a long time, the working classes have been ignored, their opinions aren't taken into account. And I mean, if they come forward very vocally, I think that's to be celebrated. And I mean, the communities here have a lot to say. They have a lot to say about the positive things that are going on here, but they're quite right to point it out when things aren't, you know, as they're being spun to be by the likes of Fine Gael or Labour. Yeah.
No, I just wondered, the reason I asked that is because what we see out here, whether it's people at protests or people going around with video cameras and all of that, it's much more in-your-face politics than perhaps the same thing happens where I am, where politicians are being pressurised, but it's done by keyboard jockeys. It's much more social media, and it's much more, in fact, it's possibly even more effective because it's so organised and it's even got commercial companies behind it. Is that just a class thing, I suppose, in that way? You know, they're both trying to get the same objective, which is to be heard. But you get to be heard a certain way if you've got technology or you've got...
Well, I think for me in particular and for Sinn Féin, we're not covered very widely in the media, in the establishment media, on the work that we do. So, I mean, I could do a press release on the housing figures here in Dublin South West. It's never going to be picked up by the likes of the Times or the Indo, never in a million years. So we'll have to think of other ways of getting our opinions out there and getting the work that we do out there. And a big part of that is social media. We rely very heavily on it. And I mean, that's true for the water protesters, for example, as well. Do you know what I mean? They have to... What you see when you see those videos is a very real human perspective on what's actually happening in their communities, and I think, you know, it's a vital part of our democracy. Yeah.
Something that's been very much in the news over the last couple of weeks is the issue of councillors. It's not just councillors, but it's public representatives and their interests and declarations of interests. How do you feel about that? Now, we had suggestions that certain things were happening and under-declaring it out here, and I'm not going to go into any individual cases. Do you think that the council itself should be much more vigorously pursuing as to what people's interests are? Don't we have an entitlement as voters to know basically whether somebody is cheating on their taxes, whether they're landlords and so on and so forth, and voting one way when they've got a vested interest another way?
Oh, absolutely, we do. We need a lot more transparency, in my opinion, in local politics and in national politics. I do have to say, though, that I think that the responsibility for that lies on the shoulders of each individual councillor. You know, the form isn't as tricky as some people are making it. It's actually not tricky at all. And I don't think that anybody is that wealthy that they have so many properties that they can't remember to list them all, to be honest with you. We do have an ethics officer here who does a great job. I also think that the standards in public office, you know, they release an annual report every year that says we have no power to pursue any of this. They're basically just a reporting body and they can't chase after anyone. So I think we need, you know, perhaps legislation that allows the standards in public office people to enforce those standards.
No, that would be what I've seen as well, is that essentially you get a recording and that's about it. It's almost like you can put your hand, you know, even if you get caught with your hand in the cookie jar, it's not necessarily, you're not going to be made to resign and so on and so forth. And
there was actually, it was very telling. In the same week that these three councillors were exposed in RTE as being open to allegedly, you know, open to perhaps allowing themselves to be influenced with an exchange of funds. Allegedly, I'm just saying. Mick Daly and Cllr Wallace were arrested for trying to protect our neutrality via protest. They were arrested and put in jail. There was no sanction whatsoever on these other councillors, and that's a very marked contrast and one which needs to be explored, in my opinion.
I would argue in this one is that if you and I, well no, we leave you out of, but if I climbed over a fence in Shannon and I got fined $2,000, the chances are they'd make me pay it.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and that's why I was raising the intriguing possibility of, like a footballer, why doesn't Mick get it? You know, I'm not objecting to Mick's right to protest, but there's a difference between how public reps are treated and how.
I suppose,
and somehow or other.
Ordinary Joe Soap.
Ordinary Joe Soaps, yes. I mean, coming on, you're, as I say, you're coming up to an election. You've been hampered to a degree because you've had civic duties to fulfil. What's the main issues you'd like to people, when they think about Sarah Holland and giving her a number one, what are the issues you'd like to them to relate to you about? Yes.
Well, I suppose I do a lot of work here on the ground locally, but the big issues that I want to, well, the reason that I joined Sinn Féin was to try to tackle inequality. I mean, if you look, for example, educational inequality is rife across this constituency. In some areas you have, you know, 70 or 80% of kids going on to third level education. In others, it's under 20. And that's a very marked contrast, which I think, you know, that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And, you know, education is, to me, the fact that it's not secular causes a lot of problems. I think that's something that we need to address. It's of primary importance, especially here in this heavily, you know, populated urban area.
Last but by no means least, I can't let you go without saying, Fur House, they got me some of my great ratings for the year. What's the story down there? I mean, it was put to me that on the one hand we have people with green space, and I can understand their concerns. On the other hand, we had other people who were interested in, you know, their focus was on education, both very noble objectives, and I couldn't quite grasp why something couldn't be worked out between neighbours in effect. What's the current status, I suppose? I'm not going to ask you of you because it's, what's the current status?
Well, I suppose I have to agree with you there. I couldn't understand either why a compromise couldn't be reached. My views are on the council record that I was very much in favour of the schools. One, because it was a Gael school. Two, because the other one is an Educate Together, both of which are underserviced in this community. And the site itself, I don't have a problem with. Fur House is one of the most, you know, it has one of the highest proportions of green space in the county, perhaps in the whole, you know, all of the local authorities. They have a richness of amenities, a richness of green space. The two schools, they don't have much of a footprint, and they're providing a fantastic service to the kids of the area. So, you know, I give those schools my full support.
Mayor Sarah Holland, 2016 could be another breakthrough year for you, or watershed year for you. If you would just like to say a greeting to the listeners and the constituents and the citizens you represent, for.
Have a happy and peaceful and prosperous new year, and please use your vote, no matter who for, and think about the female candidates. We've
just come through a momentous 2015, so let's hope that we continue on that momentum. Look, Mayor Holland, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mick.